Welcome to American English for English learners. In today's lesson, we are going to study hedging, one of the most important skills for advanced English communication. Hedging helps you express ideas with the right level of certainty, politeness, and professionalism. At a high level, hedging is not weakness. It is the ability to say what you mean with precision, tact, and control. Instead of sounding too blunt, too vague, or too forceful, you learn how to sound clear, diplomatic, and credible. For example, instead of saying, "This plan will not work," you might say, "This plan may face challenges without a clear implementation timeline." That small change makes your English sound more natural, professional, and rhetorically mature. By the end of this video, you will understand what hedging is, why it matters, and how to use it effectively in academic writing, professional emails, meetings, feedback, and sensitive disagreement. Let's begin.
When immense pressure is applied to a structure with zero flexibility, it doesn't bend, it shatters. This mechanical failure is a frequent occurrence in American corporate environments, specifically among highly proficient non-native speakers. Individuals with flawless C2-level grammatical control often hit an invisible wall. The breakdown rarely involves incorrect verb tenses or a limited vocabulary. It is a failure of tone, where a speaker enters a room and sounds either unexpectedly abrasive to their colleagues or excessively timid. Advanced fluency does not automatically grant rhetorical awareness. Vocabulary is effectively useless without control over the force behind it. Advanced learners often actively avoid a linguistic strategy called hedging because they mistake it for vagueness, an apology, or a lack of confidence. This split screen shows two common failure states. On the left, a blunt claim, "This policy will fail." On the right, an apologetic retreat. "Maybe I could be wrong, but..." To sound naturally authoritative, a speaker must employ stance management. Stance management is the deliberate, strategic reduction of linguistic force. It operates on two distinct parameters. Parameter 1 is epistemic control. This requires the strict alignment of claims to the available evidence. If the data is partial, the language must reflect that limitation. Parameter 2 is interpersonal control, which involves navigating professional hierarchies and exercising tact without compromising the core message. C2 fluency requires engineering statements that are rigorous, tactful, and precisely calibrated to the data. Think of a sentence as an operational control panel. These two primary dials regulate our output, epistemic certainty and interpersonal imposition. Let's load an uncalibrated absolute statement. The evidence proves the process is inefficient. Both dials immediately slam into the red. In most professional settings, this is too high friction to be effective. To cool this down, we apply the first layer of control, modal verbs. We target the absolute verb, proves. Swapping proves for will creates a slight reduction in absolute certainty. Swapping will for may establishes a moderate, tactful probability that sits in the optimal center of both dials. If the data is highly speculative, we can toggle down to might or could, dropping our certainty metrics into the lower quartile. Beyond modals, we have an alternative mechanism, stance verbs. We replace basic declarative verbs with terms like appear, suggest, and indicate. Stance verbs serve a mechanical function. They sever the claim from the speaker's personal bias. Using a word like suggests tethers the claim directly to the observed data. If that data later changes, your professional credibility is protected because you only reported what the evidence indicated at the time. By adjusting modals and stance verbs, a speaker systematically moves from an unprovable absolute to a defensible, data-backed observation. For finer adjustments, we use specific modifiers like epistemic adverbs and approximations. You can scale certainty by choosing possibly for weak evidence or likely for strong evidence. Terms like largely or partly prevent a statement from becoming an inaccurate overgeneralization. The most effective strategy for sensitive professional disagreement is the impersonal, evidence-based construction. Consider the top line. "I believe your timeline is wrong." This reads as a personal attack. By eliminating the I and the you, we arrive at the bottom line. It appears that the timeline may be too ambitious. This impersonal structure transfers the burden of truth away from your subjective opinion and onto the external evidence. Depersonalization acts as a defense mechanism. It neutralizes interpersonal conflict by allowing the data to deliver the critique. When these tools are misapplied, we see systemic miscalibrations. The first is hedge stacking. This sentence, I just kind of think this might possibly be, uses too many devices simultaneously. Stacking hedges clutters your syntax and makes you sound hesitant, which strips away your professional credibility. The second error is hedging objectively verified facts, such as meeting times or established metrics. Saying a meeting might start at 10 when you know the schedule signals incompetence rather than politeness. The third error is using excessive hedging to evade accountability, especially in matters involving compliance, ethics, or leadership. In professional American English, generic politeness is a poor substitute for epistemic precision. As these malfunctions show, an imprecise hedge is often interpreted as a lack of competence. To deploy linguistic devices in real time, you need an operational algorithm, the FACES framework. F is for function. First, determine exactly what the hedge is actively doing, such as limiting a broad claim or softening a critique. A is for audience. Assess the professional hierarchy and your relationship to the listener. C is for certainty. Quantify the exact strength of the evidence you actually possess. E is for effect. Decide the precise diplomatic tone your sentence needs to strike. And S is for specificity. Add concrete detail to prevent the hedge from becoming uselessly vague. FACES is a mandatory mental checklist that forces the speaker to process social and evidentiary data before selecting their syntax. Let's run a live case study, informing a colleague that their report is not ready to be sent. We start with our baseline claim. This report is not ready. Function and audience parameters rule this out. It's too blunt for a peer relationship. Applying certainty and effect rules out a vague response like, maybe it's not quite there yet, because we must remain firm that edits are required. We deploy specific hedging devices to construct the first half of the calibrated sentence, validating the work. The report has a strong foundation. We then add a pivot and a specific hedge to deliver the critique without absolute force, but several sections may need clarification. Finally, we add the condition, before it is ready to send. The resulting sentence is honest, diplomatic, and specific. This leads to the cardinal rule of advanced communication. Reserve direct language for absolute facts, and wield calibrated hedging for interpretation and feedback. Mastering C2 level control provides the precise linguistic engineering required to wield measured, undeniable authority in any professional room.
Thank you for watching. To continue building your advanced American English skills, check the video description and the channel description for the link to my C2 short story book. You will also find a free printable PDF under the video description for additional practice and reading on hedging. Download the PDF, review the examples, and keep practicing until hedging becomes a natural part of your academic and professional English.